we're slapping sanctions on Russia. Russia is hitting back with some retaliatory actions, and it's pretty easy to look at the direct impact of that, but there's second order and third order effects that will pop up all over the world and could very quickly get out of control. Think of it as the economic equivalent of a nuclear war. Nobody wants a nuclear war, but I studied a nuclear war fighting actually in the beginning of the late 1960s with Herman Kahn, Henry Kissinger, the Wohlstetter, the leading scholars of the time. The one thing they all said in common, the one thing they all shared was, don't go there. And what they meant was that nobody wakes up and says, oh, gee, I think I'll start a nuclear war today. What a good idea. That never happens. What does happen is you get into an escalatory situation, back and forth, where you're escalating and escalating, and you end up in a nuclear war. You never intended it, never started out that way, but you end up there through escalation. Take that and apply it to what is now, I would say, the first full-scale economic war, sanctions war. We've had sanctions, for a long time, and we go back to at least the 70s with Iran, but even before that, FDR put sanctions on Japan in August 1941, and then 5 months later, they bombed Pearl Harbor. So, not coincidence, but the coexistence or interaction of economic sanctions and kinetic warfare is nothing new. So we've had it for nothing on this scale. This is unprecedented in its scope and application. My only point is the effects of this are going to not just last a long time, yes, but they're going to pop up in very, very unexpected places. If you had to pick one thing, say, when did this thing take a turn for the worse so that we were on a path to war? That was the color revolution sponsored by Obama and Biden, which was a coup d'etat. The president of Ukraine at the time, he was pro-Russian, and Obama set out to depose him, and they did. And they put in Poroshenko, who was a U.S. puppet. And at the same time, like a month or 2 months after the color revolution, 1 month before Poroshenko, Putin took Crimea. He said, okay, that's how you want to play, fine. You move away from neutrality, move towards NATO, I'll take Crimea, your move. And then Putin didn't take one square inch during the Trump administration. His Trump was entirely unpredictable, but put Biden back in, who was part of the original Obama-Biden team, and here we are again. So you could easily see this coming.
If the Russians had, the propaganda to put Trump in power, why wouldn't he have done it under Trump?
Because they didn't have the propaganda to put Trump in power. That was a lie concocted by Hillary Clinton, pursued by the Democratic National Committee. I did say that 6 years ago, but when you said it 6 years ago, you were disregarded as a kook. But now, through multiple investigations, report, that information is out there. In fact, it's worse than that. Not only was the Trump-Russia, collusion hoax, which has been thoroughly looked at by congressional committees, the Department of Justice Inspector General, the Mueller Commission. Everybody looked at it. Bipartisan, independent, Senate all said the same thing. It was a hoax. It was a fake dossier. It never happened. So not only was Trump not in Putin's pocket, he was the only one who stood up to Putin in such a way that Putin didn't take one square inch of territory. He took Crimea under Obama. Now he's taking kind of half the country under Biden. Didn't take anything under Trump. So that completely debunks that. But just to take it one step further, who is in the pocket of the Ukrainians, at least? And the answer is Joe Biden, because of Hunter Biden, who made millions of dollars from Burisma, their large natural gas company. Ukraine is ranked in the low 90s of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's the most corrupt country in Europe, one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Zelensky is just another oligarch, just another phony. And he banished 11 political parties that make up the rest of the parliament. He banned all their parties, arrested some of their leaders, took over the state media. He's got tens of millions, if not more, stashed away in the bank. He's one of the most corrupt officials around, just another oligarch. When you've got two great powers, whether it's the U.S. and Russia or U.S. plus Europe and Russia confronting each other, the idea of buffer states, that's as old as, if not history, at least the history of buffer states is several centuries old at this point. It's a part of what every international strategist looks at. So Ukraine should be a buffer state. It should be neutral. That way Putin has no reason to invade, and we have no reason to try to push the borders of NATO to a point slightly east of Moscow, which Moscow hasn't been attacked from the east since Genghis Khan. The Russian Navy is in the Black Sea. There are not going to be any exports from Ukraine, and the U.S. has banned most exports from Russia. And Russia has retaliated by saying, we're not going to export you anyway. Even if you didn't have a ban, you're on our ban list. But you take 25% of the world's grain exports off the market. Tell me what that does to the price of wheat. And by the way, wheat's not just a loaf of bread. Most grain is used to feed livestock. So it goes straight through the price of pork chicken, beef, etc., you're looking at things doubling or more. So those are some of the economic effects. And those are the easy ones. I'll give you an example of a more difficult one. So, we kicked Russia and their 10 biggest banks out of SWIFT, so you can't use SWIFT to move money around. Kicked them out of the dollar payment system. Did a long list of things. Can't trade Russian bonds, can't receive, can't send, etc. Somebody at the Treasury finally woke up and said, well, wait a second. If we tell Russia they can't pay the debt, who loses from that? They keep the money, and our bondholders, it's American bondholders who lose money. It's the creditor who loses out when the debtor can't pay. Where are those bonds? Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of them are in BlackRock. They could be in someone's 401k. Like, I didn't buy any Russian bonds. Well, did you buy an emerging market ETF from Morgan Stanley? Because there could be some Russian bonds in there. I mean, take a look. When you tell the Russians that they can't pay their debt, and so debt starts defaulting all over the world, you don't know where it's going to pop up. And this is why I use the nuclear war analogy. You're playing with a global liquidity crisis. That's how these things can evolve very quickly, as we saw in 2008 and 1998. The dollar has been a cryptocurrency since at least 1979. That was the last year the Treasury issued a paper Treasury note. It was like stamp. So the dollar has been digital, and message traffic has been encrypted since around 1980. But I think in terms of the impact on the dollar, this is, be careful what you wish for. And this was exactly what I was saying earlier in terms of second and third order effects. And I warned the Pentagon about this, and I warned the Treasury about this, because I know how economic sanctions work. I've been very involved in that from the point of view of the intelligence community and also advising the government. But if you use them too much and too broadly, they actually lose all their impact, because the people you're targeting say, well, okay, no mas, I'm out of the dollar system. You've done it one too many times. And this is an example of that. We've never frozen a central bank before. We have now. We've never kicked an entire country out of SWIFT, with the exception of Iran. We have now with Russia. And so instead of just sitting there saying, oh, gee, you got me, we can say, okay, let's go to a new payment system. Let's pick up a new currency. The Saudis are saying the same thing. And all of a sudden, Mohammed bin Salman, you have a yacht in Monaco. Who knows how many houses and palaces around the world, private jets. And they're like, actually, all that stuff could be seized. Because that's what we're doing to the Russian oligarchs. We saw this kind of neo-fascism in Canada very recently with Chrystia Freeland as the deputy prime minister, freezing the bank accounts and the crypto wallets of the truckers. If you supported the truckers under a recent interpretation of Canadian law, that's a criminal act. But my point being, so she's seizing the accounts of blue-collar truck drivers, and Biden's seizing the accounts of oligarchs, but it's the same thing. And suddenly, Canada and the U.S., two of the number one, I think number 5 economy in the world, number 6 maybe, have frozen Canadian dollar and U.S. dollar accounts of people they don't like. Now, you can say it's for good reason, and Putin should have invaded Ukraine. I get it. But if you're a Saudi prince, if you're certainly a Russian, or if you're a Chinese oligarch, how comfortable are you with the dollar right now? I'm going to suggest the answer, not very.